I appreciate so much the way the student body supports each other in this way. I think CMS, in offering seniors the opportunity to research and then present on a topic that is important to them, really gives you an opportunity that most young people do not have. And I appreciate the way in which the community honors that. And I remind you that it's important during the presentations to use technology responsibly. During the last presentation, we did have someone's phone go off, so I would appreciate if you would just check right now, make sure your phone is on vibrator sizes. That would be helpful. Also, if you haven't seen many presentations yet, I noticed we have some underclassmen in the crowd today. And so I want to, I'm not sure if you know this, but a big part of the SEE tradition is that there's a question and answer session at the end. And students are very, very welcome to participate in that. Okay? It's, I think, one of the most important parts of the SEE presentation. It's where we really come to understand what people know about the topic, and the research that students have done is extensive. So it's a wonderful way for them to demonstrate that. Okay? With that said, during that session, please make sure that you're asking questions, not making comments. We all know that trend. Okay? So make sure that you are leaving the floor to the speaker. Okay? With that in mind, I would like to open by saying something just about the young woman who's about to present to you. This student is someone who has impressed me over the course of the year by her ability to listen. And oftentimes she shares things in writing that she doesn't share aloud. And as a teacher, I'm always like, why didn't you say it? Why didn't you say it? So it is such a pleasure for me to open this space for the student to speak, because I think she has important things to say.
Hello, my name is Tania Valencia. The topic of my research is violence against women in the Dominican Republic. The title of my senior oral defense presentation is Machetes, Machistas, y Mujeres, Malheridas, the disheartening reality of gender-based violence against women in the Dominican Republic. In 2012, Davender Kumar published an article titled The Cost of Machismo in Honeymoon Island. Published in Al Jazeera, the article sheds light upon machismo and the culture of violence against women in the Dominican Republic. His article begins with an alarming anecdote of violence against women. At 24, it is already a struggle for Altagracia to carry on living. Each time she looks at herself in the mirror, all she can see is the deep scars in her face and stomach. Inflicting grievous wounds, her machete-brandishing former partner was adamant to finish her off. Seeing her bleed profusely, he left her for dead and disappeared. Altagracia is battling serious repercussions of the attack that nearly killed her. Physically and psychologically scarred, she contemplated suicide on a number of occasions, but changed her mind thinking of her son. Pointing to her scarred face, which is still not healed, she asks, "Who will ever love me?" Her perpetrator, like many others, is still absconding justice. Gender-based violence in the Dominican Republic is a topic that is very much overlooked and yet runs rampant. Rooted in machismo culture, the normalization of gender-based violence leads to a perversion of familial relationships. In other countries where violence against women is common, governments and non-profit organizations are working together to sensitize the public through mass media to promote social programs that focus on violence against women. Government and non-government organizations in the Dominican Republic should study these methods to highlight the causes of the issue. This approach will lead to the deconstruction of the narrative that says that it's acceptable to hit women, and inspire changes to social norms that dictate gender roles in our culture. Numerous women in the Dominican Republic are victims of gender-based violence. According to the Comité de América Latina y el Caribe para la Defensa de los Derechos de las Mujeres, or CLADI, the Dominican General Attorney reports in 2011 a total of 72,199 complaints presented to the units of attention to violence against women in the country, of which 66,177 were on gender and domestic violence, and 6,022 related to sexual offenses. Giselle Lugo, a writer for The Guardian, an internationally esteemed newspaper, is in accordance with Claudia, as she reports that gender-based violence is the fourth leading cause of death among women in the Dominican Republic. In a span of 6 years, 1,383 women and girls were killed, 783 at the hands of a current or former partner. Gender-based violence is in fact personal, as often it is committed by intimate partners. The Dominican Republic's culture is one in which machismo is socially acceptable. In the article I referenced earlier, Kumar defines machismo as a byword for ultra-masculinity. He goes on to share an anecdote of 60-year-old Lourdes, who regards machismo as standard. It is common in our community to hit women. It is tradition. Lourdes' assertion is supported by evidence gathered by the World Health Organization, which observes that the following are examples of norms and beliefs that support violence against women. A man has a right to assert power over a woman and is considered socially superior. A man has a right to physically discipline a woman for incorrect behavior. Physical violence is an acceptable way to resolve conflict in a relationship. A woman should tolerate violence in order to keep her family together. There are times when a woman deserves to be beaten. The belief that a woman should tolerate violence in order to keep her family together was prevalent in Lourdes' relationship as she endured 23 years of abuse. Her husband repeatedly attacked her with a machete and nearly slit her daughter's throat. One day, she decided to leave her husband as a way to save her own life, as she was certain she was going to be killed one day. Violence against women perpetuates further violence, both against women and every member of the family. In its study, Intimate Partner Violence, the World Health Organization defines intimate partner violence, or IPV, as one of the most common forms of violence against women, and includes physical, sexual, and emotional abuse and controlling behaviors by an intimate partner. IPV extends from women to children, as a number of studies have found an association between IPV and child abuse in the same household. Witnessing violence in a household is highly influential in shaping individual behavior, as social tolerance of violent behavior is likely learned in childhood through the use of corporal punishment or witnessing violence in the family. Witnessing violence during childhood leads to the notion that violence is normal. Furthermore, exposure to IPV against the mother is one of the most common factors associated with male perpetration and female experience of IPV later in life. To address violence, gender-based violence against women in the Dominican Republic, governments and nonprofit organizations should work together to sensitize the public. Forming organizations that target those affected by and those likely to partake in violence against women is one of the solutions that has proven to be effective. As I mentioned before, experienced abuse as a child has been linked to engaging in violence against women. There are, however, programs specifically designed to educate parents that have been proven to reduce or prevent child abuse and maltreatment, and thus help reduce child conduct problems and later violent behavior. Such programs as Men Against Violence and Mentors in Violence Prevention, which focus on gender roles in violence against women, recognize the societal pressures of masculinity that associate violence with male dominance. By raising consciousness and challenging violent acts, these programs hope that the youth deem it unacceptable to partake in violence as a sign of manliness. Most importantly, the idea that hitting women is just our culture must be challenged. A study in the Dominican Republic by the Centro de Estudios Sociales y Demográficos shows that 3% of women and 5% of men agree with domestic violence if the woman neglects their children. 4% of men agree if the wife leaves the house without notifying the husband. 2% of men agree if the wife argues with the husband or if she burns the food. And 1% of men agree if the wife refuses to have sex with the husband. These statistics seem alarming, as it is difficult to digest that individuals, both male and female, sincerely believe that violence against women is justifiable. Although there is a percentage of people who find violence against women reasonable under certain circumstances, the percentage of these people is incredibly low. The population as a whole, however, misjudges the amount of people who are in accordance with violence against women and excuses the practice as a norm. This leads to further perpetration. Realigning these misperceptions can make people truly comprehend the reality that most people find violence against women unacceptable. Many countries are combating violence against women through the use of mass media to raise awareness and consequently heighten sympathy. For example, Soul City in South Africa used a soap opera series, the radio, and print to bring attention to such issues as intimate partner violence, date rape, and sexual harassment. Interviews from a random sample of people who were exposed to the series based on intimate partner violence were held before and after their exposure, and the results were inspiring. This program, New Mentality, and subsequent public discussion and action on intimate partner violence led to a greater number of people who agreed to the following statement: no woman ever deserves to be beaten, and disagreed to the following statement: women who are abused are expected to put up with it. According to the efforts in South Africa, mass media edutainment, educational entertainment called edutainment, is an effective strategy when combating negative public perceptions. While the Dominican Republic doesn't have a tradition of producing local soap operas, and making a soap opera is something that the government and nonprofits might find too costly and too time-consuming, the Dominican Republic does have a culture of watching a lot of television programs. Through television programs, the Dominican Republic can achieve the same results as the ones in Soul City. There are programs that have already been implemented, and an economically viable and practical option to emulate the previous attempts at edutainment would be taking one of the local programs, such as Nuria Pierre's show, which is a weekly investigation show that is one of the most viewed series in the Dominican Republic, and implementing a section dedicated solely to investigating and reporting on violence against women. Pierre could raise awareness of the problem and could match the efforts that the South African efforts had on their respective populations. Pierre, a successful Dominican woman herself, might also inspire women to speak up against the issue by presenting a positive example of female empowerment. The Dominican Republic's plague of gender-based violence caused by machismo cultural heritage leads to a distortion of familial relationships and undermines opportunities for justice. The Dominican Republic can address this problem effectively if governments and nonprofit organizations adopt strategies such as teaming up to sensitize the public through programs that use mass media, including soap operas and the radio, and sponsoring civic efforts modeled after Men Against Violence and Mentors in Violence Prevention. Both governmental and non-governmental agencies in the Dominican Republic should study these methods to highlight the causes of the issue. This approach will lead to the deconstruction of the narrative that says that it's culturally acceptable to hit women, and will thus inspire change to social norms that dictate gender roles in which women are victims and male are aggressors in our culture. Thank you.
You explained that it's based on a personal belief that the man is superior to the woman. Well, it's all based. Now, most of the Dominicans are highly religious and go to church. So I was wondering if you've seen any possible ability to have that personal belief of, I'm sorry, personal belief changed by priests and other people of that you understand what I'm saying?
I understand. I feel like it is very critical to follow Christian belief and believe that women and men are equal and they should be respected, and then proceed to commit violence against women. And I think it would be a good solution if preachers are informed on the problem and can subsequently maybe include that in their sermons. And since a lot of people do actually go to church and have a lot of respect towards the preacher, maybe that would be a great solution. So.
Do you think that this is a class issue, or do you feel like even at CMS as a community, we struggle with ideas of machismo and even a certain kind of violence?
I think that machismo is seen everywhere, regardless of class. Women who are poor usually experience this violence and don't have the option of leaving violent relationships because women aren't, like, half of women that are unemployed. Wait, let me see. 50.5% of women employed when compared to 79.8% of men are employed. So sometimes women are economically dependent on men. However, the machismo culture is seen everywhere, and I think in the upper classes, this violence is mostly, like even at the school, is verbal violence and verbal abuse towards women. Does that answer your question?
What is the link between verbal abuse and physical abuse? You're talking about deconstructing a narrative of machismo, okay? So what's the connection between the verbal narrative and the actions that follow?
Can you rephrase that question?
Are you familiar with the term microaggressions? Have you heard that term before?
Sorry.
Microaggressions is a term that's used to talk about the ways in which people harm each other in small ways in certain moments. So I'm going to take a risk here and give you an example. If I'm a woman in a room and I hear the word bitch is used in the room, okay, to describe something that happened, okay? A microaggression has been committed against all the women in the room because it's a word that is gender specific, okay? It's the same with words like cunt and other words that are aggressive to certain people in the room and not other people in the room, okay? Are you guys familiar with that feeling? It can happen to people of any gender. It can happen around issues of race as well. Those are called microaggressions. So I'm interested in the ways in which the microaggressions are embedded within the verbal narrative around violence. You brought up some pretty shocking statistics about the kinds of things people say. Yet you also showed that the number of people who think it's right to actually do those things is much smaller than the number of people who participate in the narrative about it being okay somewhere, okay? So what's the connection between, in the slide you showed, where it showed the parent hurting another parent and the child witnessing that? How does that translate into across the barrier between the verbal and the physical?
Well, both aggressions are evident, and I feel like the combination of both these aggressions seeps into both women and men, and I feel like in the end, whether it's verbal or it's physical, these aggressions add up and they basically continue the machismo culture and they continue the violence against women.
So can you tell us a little bit more about the laws of the Dominican Republic, and more specifically about how when women do go to the police, their experience when they try to stand up against this?
Well, the first law regarding violence against women was actually implemented in 1997. And to put that into perspective, I was born in 1987, so it's a fairly young law. Also, the Dominican Republic has a very flawed way of making laws and actually implementing them, and because of this corruption and the way the legal system works here. The I read an article called Machismo, Femicide, Sex Tourism, an Overview of Women's Rights in the Dominican Republic. And the author of this article, Olivia Marble, said that the judicial system doesn't take violence against women seriously. And Giselu has some facts that said that 476 of the 10,000 complaints of violence against women received judgment, and 66 offenders were convicted. So this leads to the notion of women thinking that there's no point in actually calling for help from the judicial system, and it also leads to victim blaming, because if people in positions of power don't take the problem seriously, then why should common people take this seriously?
And during your research, did you come across somewhere that women who are abused can go?
Yes, there are women's shelters that are placed throughout the country. And these are basically sanctuaries for women who are victims of abuse. But the research also said that it doesn't really work that much because there's a scarcity of resources, and sometimes that results in re-victimization of women.
Two questions. One is out of curiosity. You mentioned that domestic violence is a leading cause of women deaths in the Dominican Republic. In your research, did you come across the first theory? Okay. And then the second question is that what's the difference between a general law against violence and a law against violence towards women?
Well, I guess it's the way it's written through the laws. A lot of the time, the statistics regarding femicide, which is the act of killing a female, they aren't correct because they usually file it under homicide. So if they actually make a law that says femicide and describes it, does that answer your question?
I just I was looking for some information on what's the difference between obviously the obvious reason, the obvious difference between a homicide and a femicide is that a femicide is directed towards hate. You kill someone, you killed that woman because you hated her. So why, I don't know, it's maybe there's no answer to my question. I'm just wondering what's the difference between a homicide and a femicide legally? Yeah, why do you need a separate law for femicides, and why do you need a separate law for killing off a human being and killing a woman specifically?
Because, first of all, for statistical reasons, because if we do have statistics regarding this, then the public can be aware of these statistics and they can see that it is actually a problem. And also, courts review different cases. So if they feel I'm assuming that if they feel they've reviewed a whole lot of homicide cases, maybe they might not, if they don't have a distinction between homicide and femicide, then they wouldn't really focus on femicide.
I wanted to ask you in response to David, can you showed me, and we talked a lot about data you saw about intimate partner violence. Are you following what I'm talking about when we were talking about the data you talked about? The difference between a homicide and a femicide is that often what you said, the homicide is disconnected, right? It's just you kill someone because you're robbing them or whatever. But the femicides are a little bit different. What's the difference?
It's the deliberate act of killing a female. It's specifically directed towards females, probably because of some ingrained hate they have or machismo culture.
And what you showed me in your research was that those crimes are different because they happen privately rather than publicly, right? It's not like a person walking into a store and robbing someone. It's that a person
It's
intimate partner violence. And so you use IPV, intimate partner violence. So someone that is in your personal sphere rather than from outside.
Was that helpful?
It's fun.
Did you come across, was it me?
It's fine.
Oh, sorry.
You guys, we have plenty of time for questions because the presentation that was supposed to go this afternoon rescheduled, so there's time to like talk out this issue, which I think is worthwhile.
Did you come across, maybe say only what you're researching for this project? If you did, have they helped the Dominican community resolve this problem in the Dominican Republic? Or has it just stayed the same? Is it actually working? Because I know that around 2 or 3 years ago, there's a home system of how to board and abuse, especially from your partner. And it's a whole process you go through that they even counsel the children in case of their harm. Did you research anything about that, and what are the statistics right now of how effective this program has been?
Well, one of my articles said that women have to present assaults to the judge and to the partners, which means that basically they have to confront their partners and tell them that they have to go to court and they have to, go through all this legal process. But I didn't encounter what you mentioned. So I guess, although that is an improvement, we still have a long way to go.
This is the reality of the Dominican Republic, and I can see you are concerned enough to research about this topic. What advice do you give to women, especially young ladies wrestling with school, to protect themselves against women violence? And the other question is, have you received the effect of being violate your right in some way just to be a woman?
I think that once people become aware of the problem, they see it a lot more often. Because if you don't really see that there's a problem, it's just, you brush it off, you don't really notice it. So I guess for women, I'd say, try to become aware of the problem, try to tell your other sisters. And yeah, being a woman in the world means you're going to get hurtful insults or maybe something even as extreme as being killed because of being a woman. Personally, I hear a lot of sexist jokes and that hurts a lot, but the point is speaking up against it in a way that is rational and calming, in order to make the person who made the joke realize that they're actually causing more harm and that it's not just a joke.
That, like, Ms. Juana made me realize something, and I just wanted to ask you, like, I know that this has a lot to do with women and all, but I also want to see, what do you think has to be done with men? Like, education-wise, like, obviously you need to educate women to protect themselves, but what do you think has to be done with men? Because they're the ones that do this.
Well, it's basically making them aware of the gender norms that have been rooted inside them. If they become aware that manliness does not equate violence, and basically that they can become more aware and they can prevent themselves from committing crime. Jen?
It's likely like being a devil's advocate, but I know a lot of times, because of this like a well-known issue nowadays, violence against men from women is overlooked. And I wanted to know, like, can you find anything about that? What do you think about that?
I think it's definitely a problem, and I didn't mean to sort of like overlook it, but violence against women is definitely a very big problem here in the Dominican Republic, and I would say it's a lot greater than men's problems here. But that doesn't mean that, we shouldn't research upon that and bring awareness to that problem.
these questions are interesting, the two next to each other, because you're asking like, what about women's violence toward men? And you're asking like, what can we do to depotentiate the violence? And you're saying to raise awareness, and I'm gonna push you a little bit on that. So I, as an individual woman, how do I raise awareness in my partner? Like what are some specific strategies for me doing that? Because you've talked about how we can attack it culturally through mass media and things like that, but what about in the private sphere where it's occurred? If Mr. Rosegold says, commits an act of microaggression, how should I address that in my daily life? Because this is much more what you guys are facing daily, right? If the person sitting next to you says someone's a bitch and it hurts you, what do I say?
Well, you approach the situation calmly, because that way the person who committed the aggression listens to you actually. And that's what you want. You want someone to listen to you and to become aware that what they've said is hurtful.
So you feel like just by calling each other on the ways in which we feel harmed, we can teach each other to listen and speak more gently, and that this will affect the way we treat each other physically.
I wondered when you were researching, when a woman stay at home even if she's beaten, what's the percentage? Is it because of her personal beliefs that it's okay because the man is who he is? And what's the percentage of I'm starving if I leave this home and because of economical reasons I'm going to stay within this situation?
I didn't come upon like the exact percentages. I just think it's like one thing stacked on top of the other, and sometimes it's just one by no escape.
How do you see this problem in the future? Do you think it's going to be a different view and design that will be like this discrimination over level?
I mean, hopefully it will go away within time, but it's just, there's so many aspects to this problem that it's really difficult to tackle every single aspect. I chose to focus on the root of the problem because if we stop it at the roots, then we don't have to, stop it later on in life. I don't know, who knows, maybe when I grow up, I'll advocate for women's rights and there might be a change, but.
You are grown up.
More than that.
You're already doing it. Yay.